I don't know the process, as Sandy would say. How do you do that? I just only have the vision for it.
Can I add to that?
And I'm not a process person.
And then then I'll want to wrap this up.
Yeah,
and move on to the next one.
but the process that you described could be seen as, and one of my faculty colleagues says, I can teach anything, and just tell me how much time you want me to teach. I can do the 15-minute version, the 10-minute, the 10-hour. What they did probably is about a 10-hour rough cut commitment of the board to spend just on budget.
Yeah.
But you could get a good sense of intelligence and context with about a 10-hour commitment. Now, that may not sound like a lot, but given the way and the amount of times we spend, that's an enormous trade-off that we would have. And would we want to spend 10 hours of our time trying to get more context and understanding of the budget? I'd be willing to, just because I'm a fanatic about that stuff, but would the whole board want to do it? And that's where the value comes from. So I think it's where we go, to me, where we go with that is to sort of say, or diversity, or these other kinds of things. Where do we want to invest big chunks of our time? And almost the difficult question of how much time do we have in that deep intellectual dive. That's really policy oriented, but it's building up our context and our background.
Yeah.
So that's what I hear you saying, and I think it's great.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
we're going to be talking about workload and, you know.
Yeah, but what you just described is really how do we balance our time, our resources, our values, our goals? Because if you could devote vast amounts of time to everything, great, go for it, but you can't. You all spend an awful lot of time with board members as it is, so. So what I'd like you to do, since we have morphed into sort of talking about how you're working together, is, now do you each have a copy of the board operating protocol?
We do, so
Okay.
it's under,
I thought those were in your packet.
Oh,
So,
it's in there.
we're gonna take a look, I think, we did start late. I think what I'd like to do is spend about 15 minutes talking about the board operating protocol, and if you decide as a group you want to talk about it more, we can. Otherwise, we'll move on with it.
Is that this one?
yeah, so board
Yeah.
policy 1711.
Yep, 1711. And so really, we've talked about how will we work together, what norms do we want to establish for our work together. Those things really come from the board operating protocol. What I'd like you to do, I want you to look through this. I'm going to hand out highlighters. Pass those down. Everyone take a highlighter, please. Hopefully they work. I got this from the office. Okay, great. I'd like you to go through this. Try to read through it fairly quickly. Highlight things that look like norms or standards of behavior in here that you're expecting from yourselves or each other. And if there are areas where you have a question, put a question mark next to that. I'll give you a couple minutes to do that.
Or if there's areas that we don't think should be part of the protocol?
Put a question mark next to it. Yeah, that would be a question or a topic you want to discuss. Or whatever symbol you want.
I'm highlighting those.
No shame, Sandy,
Nope.
no shame.
So fabulous.
I'm big.
Oh.
I believe so. I haven't seen it myself, but I bet you that's what it is.
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't getting any Okay, good.
It is. Yeah, both. This time of year, it's even higher than it is in the summer. There's a creek that runs right over there, and I think it's kind of an overflow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Where is our social media stuff in here?
So it's not in, that was left over for September. So there's another piece of paper, I took a stab at writing up what we talked about in September, but we never got together to
But
discuss
didn't we
it.
have that in
Yeah.
here?
It's on number 22.
Yeah, it's in.
Oh.
It's 22, it's just not
Oh.
as descriptive as we talked about, because we went to clarify it.
Better. I might be the only one. Okay, so we're gonna do a lightning round. My goal right now is to get it all up here, not discuss it, get it all up here, and then we'll go through things and start talking about them a little bit. So keep me busy writing. What are some of the norms?
So
What do you mean by norm?
Norms would be an example of an expected normal behavior that you expect from each other, or that you're calling out as something that this is how we do things. If this is a norm, this is how we operate. And those were the things that I had you highlight is you know, what are, and there are probably other definitions for norms. What do you think of as a norm? How would,
No, I think of that, I just guess, if it's your board protocol, I don't know that. I don't.
Are you meaning how we actually
It's not
do
like
things
I'm
or
just
how we
trying to
want to do
think.
things?
how they are described, how the goal was to look at what are some norms that are described in your board operating protocol.
That we agree, what are the ones we agree with?
Yes,
Yeah.
what are the ones that are found in here? Not necessarily that you agree with.
Found.
Board members.
Okay.
What are some norms that are described in this board operating protocol?
Okay,
Board
be
members
collegial.
making decisions representing the needs and interests of all students.
Okay,
feel pretty good about that one.
There you go.
And Kimberly, you said collegial,
If I'm taking the theme,
Mhm.
I'm seeing being, that we're collegial
okay?
to each other, staff, superintendent.
Being collegial and interactions?
Yeah.
Like that, okay. Okay, great. What else?
Also, going along with being collegial is kind of following a procedure. So if you have
Okay.
certain issues, you go through a certain process, predictable process.
So we follow procedures, okay?
Communicate in an open manner. There's the trust and transparency, publishing agendas, and that's, a lot of ways.
And some of that's mandated by law, of course.
Yeah, some of it, but some of it's more.
But some of it's not. Some of it's an attitude.
Respect and own majority opinion, or majority decision,
Respect majority decisions, okay?
and own.
And what?
Own.
Oh.
Respecting the majority.
I think we typically do a pretty good job with that, even if we disagree.
We haven't always.
Mhm.
I think the new.
Let's get them all up here and then we'll talk about them.
Okay.
I promise I'll give you time to discuss each of them. Let's get them up first.
Okay.
There's a whole lot of norms around the president's role.
Okay.
Okay.
It's an expectation of continual improvement and learning.
What else?
I think attendance and preparation, or just preparation, but presence.
Presence.
Okay. Show up, be prepared.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that being advocates for public education, that struck me.
Yeah.
Governance role, practicing a governance role.
Can you give me a little bit more? What?
Number 24, board members will practice a governance role emphasizing planning, policy making, and public relations.
Okay.
So I think that goes back to the earlier conversation.
That's really staying at the governance level.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
So I saw two things here, minority voices, and I think we probably won't have as much of an issue this go around, but that we are listening to
Respectful.
minority voices, and we all have different lenses, and it's not neither right, wrong, or.
So that norm would be, we listen to all
We
voices.
respect the minority voices.
Okay.
You know, and everyone knows I'm not a big advocate that we have to have 5-0 every single time we have a vote.
Okay.
And that we're not dividing it. And this is very difficult when you can only talk to one other board member.
Yes, it is.
It creates, it just does, you know, and it creates issues, and it's hard not to, but that, you've got to be, you know, it's hard not to divide and conquer.
Mm-hmm.
But when you can't talk to each other, it's hard.
Yeah, it is.
So I mean, a norm is to not do that, but it's, I think it's a challenge, so that's more of a discussion.
Yeah.
Question mark side too.
Not breaking not breaking
Fragment.
factions or
Fragments.
fragments. Yeah. Resist fragmentation, maybe?
Yeah, but I do
Okay.
think that that's a very difficult. Because I truly, and now I'm getting discussion, but really quick, I truly like every board member, you know, so you have that here, and then it's like, how do you not fragment and make it?
Right.
When communication is so limited by law.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it is, exactly.
That's what makes it super difficult.
Are there any other norms that you have highlighted, or an overarching norm that you here coming from your operating protocols?
There's one that overarchingly says evaluate educational effectiveness, so that's an
Mm.
overarching
Okay.
responsibility.
Great.
That's a good one.
Any others?
I think that fragmentation goes to not fragmenting the district personnel either, which I don't really, you're not trying to divide and conquer different people that agree with you inside the district, right?
Okay.
Well, whether it be parents
So
or
both board and
staff.
staff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean
I see what
staff,
you mean.
I mean staff.
you mean staff, okay.
Uh-huh.
And maybe even the public, too. I don't know.
I don't know if it's up there, the whole chain of command, honoring, respecting, following the chain of command, maybe that's follow procedures. Maybe that's what it is.
Yeah, why don't we put that up there? But I think the word respect is important too. Respect. Those are similar. Okay. We have them all?
I think there's an overarching, the OPMA.
Mm.
It just
Great.
is.
It's
Yeah.
got so much.
There was, here we go. Yeah, open communication, transparency, OPMA, follow OPMA. Okay, I agree.
Or how do we, kind of
Navigate.
going through the fragmentation question, how do we keep open communication amongst ourselves while we deal with it?
Okay.
And I just think it's unfair to say you're never going to have a conversation with somebody, I mean, that doesn't work either, you know?
Okay,
I don't know if we should say that.
any other norms before I move on to questions or items that we'd like to discuss? Okay, all right, next. Now, the things you put a question mark next to or want to put on the list, and again, we're not going to discuss them yet, we're just going to list them right now.
I'm going to put on the list the decision-making matrix that's attached to the board operating protocols.
It's at the very end.
It's at the very end, and it predates me.
Okay, so decision-making matrix. Does everyone have that?
Yeah, it's stapled on.
Okay. Okay, so that's an item with questions or for further discussion. What else?
I want to add in this number 20 that says communication between district staff and board members is encouraged in light of OPMA.
Say that again.
So-
Communication.
Yep, number 20 says communication between staff and board members is encouraged, or between,
What
oh,
number?
I guess I misread that as
Oh.
within board members as well as within staff. But maybe they just mean staff and board members, it's encouraged. So
I don't, what number?
20.
20.
I always read that meaning that board members are encouraged to go to
Staff,
anyone,
but
yeah.
not with each other. That communication's not encouraged.
You're not encouraged to talk to each other.
I misread that.
Well, you know,
Out loud.
yeah, so two of you obviously can talk to each other, but three is no.
That's back to what I
Outside
was
of this, right, exactly.
And I want to put
So I want to make sure I don't skip over that though. Was there a part of that you had a question about or wanted to talk
Thought
or
that
need
was-
clarity
That
on?
it was a conflict because it encouraged communication between board members. That and kind of, I interpreted it a different way, that's all. So-
So I think there is a question about the, how the board interacts with staff and the questioning. I mean, that just always is an issue. And even when you ask a question, is it implied that you're giving an order or a request?
Yep, that is always a tricky one. Have any of you ever played that game called Headbands?
Yeah.
Have you played it? You look really stupid. You wear the little band around your head and then it has the card and then you try to act it out and the person tries to guess who you are, like if it's rock star.
It's interesting.
Being a board member is like that because you've got that headband on you all the time when you're out in the district talking with staff. Go ahead, Kimberly.
What's interesting, it's funny how we all look at it differently. What's interesting to me is I don't think I have the right to ask to order any staff.
Well, I think, or it's not to order, but if you ask a question, sometimes staff doesn't know
I
if
just
you're
never
directing
ask
them
that
to do.
question.
Yeah.
I never ask that to get me anything. I ask Larry. I mean, it's
Well,
true.
well,
I just don't.
Well, and that's
I
probably.
mean, that's just me. I just don't.
Right.
I mean, that is your protocol, isn't it? it, generally, if
Well,
if a board member needs something?
It generally, I know in some districts it is, any request of a board member would go through the superintendent and who would then interact with staff, and then so the superintendent is the funnel point. We've been a bit more permissive about that as
Okay.
far as allowing board members, if, Sandy has a question about special ed, she's gonna get a better answer, more informed answer from going directly to Becky than going through me.
Okay,
However, I think Ken's point is well taken on that. When there's that level of access of board members to staff, that line of when I'm being asked a question or when I'm being given a suggestion or a thought and an idea, and when that crosses over to a directive, because, staff perceive board members as important people, and that goes to the whole question of, the board as a body versus, that's the only authority or power the board has versus the individuals.
right.
And that, I think, has been a continuing point of challenge for us.
Yes, and a very common one
Yeah,
for
yeah,
board members
not
too.
a-
Whether you're, working with staff on a board issue or even as a parent. Because I think, the way I look at it is, I think as a board member, we all have a higher level, a higher standard that we have to aspire to when we're interacting with staff. And, I've had board members push back on that and say, well, that's not fair, I should be able to act just like everyone else. Well, maybe not, but you ran for office, we all ran for office, we decided we wanted to be in a leadership position. And so I feel like I always need to make sure that I exceed the standards that maybe someone else might feel more comfortable doing, because I want to make sure that that conversation is always on a professional level.
I just feel, for me, that the buck stops with Larry. So my questions, when I have them, go through him, and if he needs to go ask the appropriate staff member. And I think that's the way that I've done it, or I've always CC'd the board president in on it.
Yeah.
Not always, most of the time. I try to remember to do that, there's times I have.
And has that worked pretty well for you?
You know what, I have not had an issue, honestly. I would never, this is just me, I'm not saying that there's not other right ways to do it, like Ken, I'm sure, is gonna have a different view of this, which is okay. I personally do not feel the need to go to a staff member. I don't feel that's my place, I don't feel that's my responsibility. I feel that if I've got a question, and I've written Larry some kind of like, hey, I wanna know this emails, right? But I don't go to the staff and ask that of them.
So let's talk about this one just a little bit for a few minutes. What are other folks' thoughts on this? What are best practices in terms of when you're talking with staff
Well,
members?
this does say, where is it? Talk about when to go to the superintendent when it's something.
Number 19.
19. Communications that may require considerable time or 20. The end of 20 may require considerable time or have political implications should be directed to the superintendent. That can be hard for a board member to know.
I just feel if I'm asking it of Larry, then it's probably a question that will take a lot of time.
But at the same, when I was reviewing for the meeting tonight, I had a question about the kindergarten proposal that had to do with the financial sheet. So I shot it to Lydia and copied Larry, because it was a very pointed question in preparation for the meeting.
But you copied him is the thing.
I did
Yeah.
copy him, so
So
he
he
knew
was
what
in
I was
the loop.
asking.
Yeah.
Right.
I get, my sense is, given the size and complexity of the district, my sense is that what will work best for us is either you ask it directly because it's a specific question and you CC the superintendent, or you just run it through the superintendent. I had a question that I had run through to the superintendent, and he said, okay, here, you go talk to the staff person and go have a conversation. And that was the appropriate way to do it, but I think starting with and in looping, and I don't know that we are, I mean, sometimes we want context, like some of the questions I have, but, the superintendent was able to write out the context, like, thank you very much, and then didn't have to send me off to a staff person, take their time, it was useful for that. So just for us, I'm kind of adopting that model, and I think it's better.
I thought we were having a different opinion.
No, I think so in
That's
some
nice,
sense.
good to talk.
Well, but in some sense, that would suggest that these items aren't really capturing what we think might be the right way to do it. And
Yeah.
then the question becomes, if the superintendent's inbox is full of word questions, then that becomes a workflow issue that we all have to understand and appreciate. But for a host of reasons, it seems like always including or directing only the superintendent, but I don't want to.
So how do you think it's working there? In terms of how we've been operating so far?
I think it works fine. I mean, I don't know what I don't know, so if there are communications or questions that are going out that I'm not copied on, I'm not generally necessarily going to be aware of them. I think it works fine either way. I do like to be at least copied. I don't mind people going directly to the person who's the best content expert for that particular question, because I think that's just more efficient, and I know some of my superintendent colleagues have very different views of that and really want to tightly constrain that that inflow and outflow of information. I don't necessarily have that need. But I think as long as it's, the questions are asked authentically, and as long as there's a recognition of how busy everybody is, and as long as the manner and tone and nature of the questions stay on the right side of an individual board member's inquiry, as opposed to an individual board member's seeming to direct. And just recognizing that staff have a higher level of sensitivity to that than you may realize, just because of the nature of your positions.
So I just don't want to worry about pissing anybody off, so.
And I think
We're putting them in a bad situation.
I think there's room for individual preferences here, it sounds like. Yeah, I think, I mean, you're erring on the side of extra caution, and that's the right side to err on, rather than the other one. Yeah, so is there a need to rewrite number 20 to be a little bit clearer?
Should we add the line that the superintendent should be copied?
I think that's been my practice all along.
I just think it's fair that we don't have to worry about this he said, she said, who said.
Well, and then we're aware of what
Yeah.
we're asking. If we're asking a question that's come from something.
Well, and because of OPMA, if he can see several of us asking the same question, it actually kind of helps.
I would be happy to add that I don't feel like that's a particular issue. I feel like I do get copied. Again, I don't know what I don't know, but I don't feel like I get excluded from that. I think if we're kind of going back to questions about this, I think there's a question about sort of the general role of the president that's come up in the last couple of months, and this goes back to one of the protocols says copying the board president. Where was that?
Mhm.
Number 18, maybe?
So
Email questions?
First page.
Yes, let's see.
Yeah, 18.
18.
Email
Oh,
questions
no,
from
so
board
it's already
members
in
to
there.
staff should be copied to the superintendent and board president.
It's already in.
Right, and historically, that has been a norm or an expectation, because the board president, as spokesperson for the board, as well as the person who, by the board's policy and protocol, has been charged with working with the superintendent to develop the agenda. The perception has been that the president should sort of be in on all of these things so that they have the full view of the board and can represent that. And I think there are some differences of opinion on that I think probably need to be clarified.
Okay.
Because as I've said, I think just about everybody sitting around this table, if you're not gonna follow it, don't put it in the protocol.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So-
Completely agree.
Right.
Completely agree.
Yeah.
So that's one.
Yeah, okay, what else? So decision-making matrix, how does the board interact with staff? That was number 20. Role of the president, that was part of
I think
18.
that's on both agenda setting
Yeah.
and spokesperson,
Yeah.
and sort of in the loop on individual board member communications.
Okay, so I want to do just an agenda check here because we are about 35 minutes behind. We started 30
Should we
minutes
still do our
behind.
questions?
About 35 minutes. And so, yeah, and I just want to check in with you and make sure that you want to keep moving on this. Because I know that the operating protocol is
We have-
something we've
yeah.
worked on, several
like to
times
work
here. So should we finish
I'll just try
listing
to
up
do
the
it
questions?
quickly. I think
Okay. Yeah.
I got us up track, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I
it's
don't
all
think you
good.
did.
It's all
No, I
No,
don't think
in
you
this
did.
last go.
That's okay, the conversation's good.
Yeah, so we do have an open question of whether or not the social media one, which is number 22, needs to have more detail to it. That was left over from the last board. We were chatting in September about it.
Okay.
Talking specifically about whether or not, and that's for the board to decide whether or not it needs more specificity.
Okay.
And then I have questions, believe it or not, about board meetings. So like number 1, number 3. And my questions really are surrounding, do we always need to do things the way that we've done them? And where are some because I've already talked about this, but my question surrounds being at the WASDF conference and seeing that study sessions around the state are being held in different ways than the way we hold them. When we're going through all this change within our school district, do we want to have more? I'm not, it's not like I'm asking for more board meetings, but is 2 enough right now when we have lots of decisions to make? I mean,
So-
what is a public forum?
We will be talking about that
And
later
around
today.
diversity,
Yep.
are we incorporating into these meetings the different, and that's, Mary Furtak has talked about, a lot about that.
Okay, so did I
So-
capture it here? Can we change the way we do things?
Yeah.
Or, yeah.
Yeah, and so that's at the end of her agenda, actually a whole section on meetings
We
themselves.
we are going to address that.
Okay,
Yeah,
but that's also
great.
under our board protocol.
Definitely.
Right, right.
Yep, and that's why it's up there, I
Okay.
agree. Yeah. Others? Other questions, topics?
Just a aside, is your board operational protocol similar to this? Very similar or just similar?
It has some similarities. Yeah, it has some similarities. There are zillions of board operating protocols out there. Our board president role is much less defined than yours is, and that is both good and bad. It can run us into problems, and at the same time, it also gives a little bit more freedom. A lot of these board operating protocols really depend upon who the board members are.
I wish we could see other districts. I mean, this is the thing, sometimes I think we build things in a vacuum.
Yeah,
Well, not
brought
since I've
some.
been
She
here.
should share some.
Yeah, I brought
Oh, when
some
I was
samples.
here?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Oh,
brought,
you did?
yeah,
I
but
remember.
Kimberly, I'd be happy to send them again, for you to look at. They're a little mind-numbing to read through because they are all pretty similar, but it is nice to see how some of them are worded sometimes.
I think another question that's come up has to do with the future agenda items request and
Right.
sort of what was the original intent of that. And
Is that part of the role of the president, or is that a different
No,
one?
it's
different.
different.
Whichever is that.
Set of meetings.
It's
Number
under our
6.
meeting.
It is under agenda
It's
setting.
it's number 6.
Okay, right.
It goes more to I'm thinking more of the,
The structure of the meeting itself.
Structure of
of
meetings.
this agenda item within the context of the meeting. And, I don't want to go to the history lesson of how it evolved, but it's sort of back to, it's gotten back to why it was created to begin with, which is, it seems like the board is more and more starting to not only just state the item, but then having a discussion around the item that members of the public might have wanted to attend the meeting had they known it was going to be discussed, which is what was happening, which is why this agenda item came into place to begin with, so that they could go on the agenda for
Announce it.
future, it's just gotten muddy.
So adding future agenda items
We have that, right?
versus talking about them.
Well, what we've
That-
done is
How
during
they're
the-
added, yes,
Okay.
how they're added.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
that's a good reason.
Okay, and then I want to add public comments and how we address public comments when there really is something that we feel needs to be on our agenda. And, and how do we respond when it's, obviously you're gonna have public always coming and talking to you. But I'm just saying, when you have community groups come and address the board and, there is, so maybe that's under new item, new business, that we have a section where we actually can have those discussions.
How public comment is,
So,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear all of that, it was
So
noisy out
how do
there.
we
A section for
respond?
new
How do
bit-
we respond?
Responding
a
to
section
public
on our,
comment.
yeah, not necessarily responding to the nitty fine details of the public comments, but do we need a section that's called new business on our agenda? And that would in part pertain to that or other.
And I think it's related to the future agenda items, because we've kind of been using the future agenda items section to do that. If a group comes and presents a dilemma, you know, how do we, again, resist talking about it on the dais without announcing it beforehand, but then how do we react to that public comment in a way that moves it forward if we feel as a board we need to move it forward?
And also, when you have new business is new business under an agenda. Mike, isn't that what city council's doing stuff? Do they have old business, new business?
It's always a challenge of how you bring new business,
Yeah, you
especially
could
when,
bring items to the floor.
especially when you have open public meeting,
Yeah.
you know, because how do you get the quorum that wants to talk about it or how?
But can't you bring an item to the floor?
Always, you could always make a motion to bring something new, but I think this whole notion, and Superintendent brings it up, how do we do that? And I think it's a challenge
You know, I think
to accomplish a lot of purposes.
in many boards, it's not uncommon for part of for the first action item be to accept and approve the agenda, which is a time at which things could be added to it.
Oh, do you not do that?
We do not do that.
Oh.
We don't approve the agenda, so it's a set agenda when we get into the meeting. And there's advantages and disadvantages of that. The public knows exactly what's on the agenda, and it's
Right.
not going to change.
Right.
It's not going to change is sometimes problematic because it doesn't allow the spontaneity that might.
Go both ways.
Yeah.
And when you have board meetings 2 weeks apart, sometimes things come up that are, you know, I like approving the agenda because then you'd hear the public comments. I just don't want to make it about public comments because it's not necessarily the case that, oh, the public said something and now we want to have, I mean, there's a whole host of reasons to have that.
So I'm gonna stop this conversation for a minute. I wanna make sure we get everything on here, and then let's go back and pick one or two things that we really wanna talk about the most. And maybe we've talked about them enough, or maybe we haven't. Is there anything else on your list that you had a question by, or an issue you wanted to bring up?
I'll just ask a question, and it's for board members to decide, but I think, and maybe it's embedded in some of these or in the protocols, but the meeting is, you know, the regular board meetings, the one at 4 o'clock today, that's the business meeting of the board, that's your meeting. And I think sometimes you can get thrown off of that a little bit, that it's the public's opportunity to meet with you, and that's not the case. You own it, you own the meeting, and I'm wondering if sometimes the conduct of the meeting is blurring that line a little bit and making it a challenge for you to do your business because you're feeling like you have to be more responsive to the audience. Then maybe I'm wrong about that, maybe you want to be more responsive to the audience, but it's your business meeting.
But maybe, and that's when we get to meetings, maybe something to talk about, because it's true, it's as, you know, as a board to talk about how we want to frame that.
I have to say, we don't give a lot of opportunities for the public to approach us as a group. We've had our conversations with the board, that's super helpful. And that goes on about 3 times a year, I think, or maybe the 4th one. But, you know, that's a lot of the time where people can express as a group to the group. So while I totally hear what Larry's saying, I think there's this other piece, I've learned a lot from those public comments, such as our diversity issues, such as a lot comes to light. You know, it doesn't mean everything's credible and we don't get down rabbit holes. I'm not saying that we do. And sometimes there are immediate things that we might need to start thinking about right away. That we can't wait another 2 weeks and another 2 weeks and then we get in this crisis mode. That's what I hate. It constantly goes to the next, you know.
So are we talking about this?
Do we wanna talk about meetings a little bit right now, or do you wanna?
No, maybe I jumped ahead, and I'd stick with.
But it's a
I
topic
think-
it is a topic we're going to talk about for sure, so, okay, did we cover everything
Thank you,
here?
Sandy.